Hi, welcome back to Serving Up Success with a Splash. As you know, I'm the corporate cockroach. And boy, do we have a show today. It's called Workplaces Reimagined. How is work actually getting done now? But before we unpack that, I want to say hello to my wonderful co-host. First and foremost,
Angie Snowball, the Renaissance woman. I cut in. Sorry, Nawtej. I was too excited.
Okay, that's okay. I'm glad you cut in because I was just about to say no. I'm not first and foremost, Bruce.
He was quiet, and I was like, "Was it my turn?"
We did the right thing. You heard the word foremost, and you me. So it was
me.
Yeah. And I'm Dr. D. I'm going to introduce myself as Dr. D just to make myself slightly, mysterious. Yeah, I'm Dr. D.
I like it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Angie, what are we drinking?
Oh, yeah. So we are drinking an 1818 champagne, and Bruce actually has it. I've been I've been stuck in over a foot of snow for the last week, so I'm faking it. But cheers.
Cheers, everybody. All right.
Nice.
Well, let's get the show on the road. All right. So today's episode, we talked about workplaces being reimagined. Well, this is not just simply about, do I work remotely or do I have to go into the office? It's about designing an environment where people can think, decide, and perform at their best. So I want to kind of give a shout out to everybody that's in kind of this debate. The first thing you want to think about is what's best for my team or my organization. It's not a simple case of, do I work from home or do I work in the office? It requires some thought. So let's call it out. The workplace isn't broken. However, the assumptions behind it are. So when I think about that, the first thing that comes to mind is just, well, we're going back to normal, so we have to return to the office. That's not a strategy. Culture doesn't live in buildings. It lives in behavior. So really pay attention to that. The best workplaces of the future are designed and not defaulted to. So today we're going to unpack the future of the workplace. What's changing, what's staying, and how can you win no matter where your desk is located? So Angie?
Yeah, I think so. Today, again, it's about culture. And I know people say we talk about culture a lot, but we do because it's one of the most undefined words in our language. Culture means a million different things. And today, what we're really focusing on is people are still asking the question, what's the key to remote work? Why did it break our culture? And like Bruce said, it didn't break it. It exposed it. It exposed that we had no culture. It exposed those people who were taking credit for other people's work because they were no longer there to do the talkity talk and the big show. It exposed the fact that some of the people that do the most work never show up and actually contribute in meetings because they're the quiet contributor. And with all that exposure, it was just complete chaos and nobody knew what to do. So on top of that part of culture, we had quite honestly, the logistic piece. Are we going to use Teams? Are we going to use Zoom? Are we going to use Google Meet? Who's sending what link? Who has the link? Do I have the right link? Am I on mute? How many times have we heard that stuff? So there's a lot of things changed at once. Now a lot of people are back to the workplace in the buildings. A lot of people are not. A lot of people are saying, nope, I always want to be remote. Other people are doing hybrid. So all of these things still exist, but the dust is starting to settle. And now it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Because this is forever. This isn't a temporary thing. And I think there's one thing that we can talk about right away, because, I like tangible things. And I'm going to pull out communication channels because this happens in my life right now. In the morning, I have to check WhatsApp, LinkedIn, email, text, GroupMe, Slack. I mean, it's wait, and then if I want to see what the kids are doing, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, there is no way for us to communicate effectively across all these channels within a certain amount of respectable time. And I think we have to define, and this comes with if we're on one team, what are we going to use? And what are we going to use it for? And then there's another sector. So, like, if we're a business owner, what does my client prefer to use? How am I going to work with them? And what are going to be my boundaries with those types of communication? So, this is just the tangible aspect of communication, which is one tiny piece of culture. So, I'm going to start with Dr. D and ask him because I ran across this situation with it was a place that basically a caretaking facility, and they had they said, okay, we're all going to use it, something similar to Slack, but they had two systems, and one of them really was supposed to be for scheduling incidents only, one was supposed to be medical only, and one, but what happened was they didn't have one for team dynamics, issues, talking to managers, talking to people. So both those things started to get in the other two things, and all of a sudden they've got two systems that are doing absolutely nothing because it's complete chaos. Now, in the academic world, you're very good at order, and just you in general, you're so good at order and structure. Like, how would you recommend people to set these communication channels in place, define what's best for them, and define what goes where? What would be your advice for people struggling with challenges like that?
So, first thing, Angie, academia is not a place for ordered communication. I would say it's the complete opposite. So, good news. There's the only way
They're
is
all the same.
So, I would say this is one of my favorite topics. By the way, it's a shame we only have 30 minutes rather than 100 hours, because I'd like to talk about this forever. And I do in various guises, you know, in research that I've done, in doctoral research that I've done, when I've taught MBAs and master students, and I think there's something foundational underneath it all. And I want to begin this. I'm going to come to your question, but I'm going to begin by talking about two new terms, being and the overarching term is being ambidextrous, being innovative, exploring new ways of working, and being efficient, exploiting old ways of being. So before you even get to the communication level, we've got to decide in this new world, because we're talking about this because the whole working practice thing is in flux. It's changes, not just because of COVID. It's not just because of AI, although that's a big component. It's because of international friction and competition.
Yeah.
A lot of nations stepping up to the plate. So there's a lot of competition. Now, so the first foundationally, before you focus on what is our communication mode, decide what we're going to do. What are we about? How much are we exploiting? How much are we exploring? And how are we combining these two things at the same time? Because the future organization is going to be built on change. So let's decide what that change is first. How much of your work and your sector is you're exploiting old knowledge, existing knowledge, where you have tacit knowledge and great expertise? How much is exploring? We'll come back to this later in the show, but foundationally, if we start answering those questions, then our communication won't suffer. We'll pick the right communication. We'll pick the right channel, because everyone's going to be motivated and everyone's going to have a sense of purpose and drive.
Yeah.
What's those terms? Exploit and explore. What is the organization all about initially?
And if I heard you right, at the heart of what you're saying is, before we jump into saying it's Slack, we're going to use Slack, there are so many steps before that if you want Slack to be effective. So we're going to have to start with what type of organization are we, who fits into what part, and then look at which tool fits best for that, and then define how you're going to use that tool very clearly. If you have this to say, it goes on that tool. If you have this to say, it goes here, type of thing. So Bruce, with with like a client situation, as people who are coaches, we feel the need to do what's best for them, right? If their company's working over WhatsApp, I should be using WhatsApp, right? If there is email, okay, it's email. But that makes it very hard for us as coaches when we're coaching several people to keep up with it. So what's your advice to both sides of that, the client and the coach, or the service provider and the client? How do they establish effective communication channels without forcing someone to be in something that's uncomfortable?
Yeah, well, first of all, it requires just good, honest dialogue as to what is best for each of you as the coach as well as the client. And what I find is it doesn't take a lot of finessing, because just as you explained at the beginning of your segment, we're all getting killed because we've got all these different tools we've become a slave to. We have to check this, check this. So what I'm finding is the client actually welcomes the conversation. Can we settle in as to when we're going to text, email, and Zoom versus maybe meet up face to face? They actually really appreciate it, to get that clarity. But back to Dr. Nawtej's point, it centers on what are the circumstances will dictate what type of tool you use in terms of communicating. But I find it's very simple to have this conversation. What happens is we typically don't have the conversation.
Right.
Just like
That's where
we
things go
don't
wrong.
take to understand each other's behavioral style.
Hmm.
Big mistake. You could be 6 months down, down the path of no return, realizing you never really understood one another. Well, the same is with communication and how you're gonna choose to do that in the work environment. You
Yeah.
don't wanna create all the angst and anxiety and realize, well, hell, if you'd have just told me we're gonna use Slack, that would have worked,
I
We'll
did that
use
too, Bruce. I did that the wrong way. Like, I was trying to make everybody happy,
Yep.
and it was just everywhere. And it's amazing that even people who aren't used to using, so generally speak, what I do when I start with a new client is I set them up a Google Drive. And so any ideas, documents, pictures, stuff that they want to
Right.
share, they can upload to the Google Drive at any point in time. If they send me an email, they know it's going into a folder and I will organize it on the Google Drive so that everything's in one place. And I told them up front, I may not respond to your email. I will collect it. It will not be unseen, but I can't respond to 150 emails a day. It's impossible for me to
Yeah.
do. So you have your block of time that I will be working and preparing for you. You have your block of time with me. And I assure you that all of that will be heard, considered, read, and understood. But I have no LinkedIn emergencies. I have no marketing branding emergencies. So when the time comes, it will all be in place. But it's amazing. Like you said, they're like, oh, okay, cool. Thanks for telling me. At least we know what the rules are. Like, yeah,
Right.
that's what it's going to be. So, Bruce, this is another question for you because I'm going to put it into the next segment here in light of time. So, these were two examples that we thought of talking about when it came to it's not broken, it just exposed things. So, it exposed that we never had good, clear communication channels, and also exposed something that I think is really, really key with remote work teams. And it's what was referred to as the quiet contributor. And this is the person that in the workplace was usually getting it all done or kind of secretly getting their ideas out there through somebody else at the water cooler, at lunch. And then somebody else would speak up and say, well, they had this game. Well, now that's not there. And the person who has the personality that doesn't want to speak up struggles, right? They struggle to get a word in edgewise. They feel uncomfortable. It builds anxiety. It hurts their performance. There's a million things that happen with the quiet contributor, yet they are so key to the success of so many teams, companies, projects, so many things. So what can we do, Bruce, with that person, that quiet contributor? What's an idea to help make sure that we're making up for them not having their ways of communicating with us at the workplace?
Well, I think, so I'm going to answer this in two ways. One, I'm going to do the simple explanation is that one of the things I do when there's like 3 or 4 or a dozen people on a call is I make sure, it's kind of the theory of the round robin. You
Yeah.
make sure you just go around the room. Don't accept silence as, everything's just fine. That is not what you want to do.
Is your ringtone
You want to make
AC/DC?
sure you say, hey, any thoughts, any comments? Just a second.
That's awesome. It was, wasn't it?
What did you hear a word I said? Somebody came in on speaking on WhatsApp. All of a sudden, it just came on. But nonetheless, you want to make sure everybody's being heard by not calling them out, just checking in, saying, any other thoughts? Andrew, do you have any thoughts on that? Peg, what are your thoughts? Just make sure they're included. But I want to tackle this in a more profound way, because I think what happened during COVID, it almost by necessity, we all had to start working, I should say, remotely. Well, what got exposed was this concept of synchronous work versus asynchronous work. And what do I mean by that? Synchronous work is that we all got to be here right now and we do things together. That, to be honest, was way oversold. That we all have to be in the same room. We all have to do things together. Now, unless you're on an assembly line or there's some complex discussion that needs to take place or some decision is needed, you don't all need to be there. What they found out was very effective was this whole idea of asynchronous work, where, you know what, I'll do my part now and you can do your part later. When it suits you best, when you're in the best frame of mind and you have that alone time so you can really think. And so what happened is,
we do that at night with Serving Up Success. We all have pieces that we do individually, and then we come together once a week and say, okay, this is where I am, where are you, where are you, and collect each other's ideas, and then go forward with the things we're working on, whether it's workshops or books or whatnot.
And that's far more effective. That's far more effective in a lot of cases. So you use synchronous when decisions are needed, topics are complex, and again, alignment matters more than speed. But if you're trying to move quickly, information's being shared, things are pretty routine in terms of updates, speed matters more than alignment, then you go with the asynchronous. And I think that's what people are battling with now. So this whole idea, and I'm actually moving into my segment too, of, one of the biggest lies in the history of the workplace is if I can see you, you're productive. That is absolute BS. Yeah. And I got to tell you, the future workplace, based on what I just described in terms of synchronous, asynchronous work, is that in the new workplace punishes activity without impact. So to your point, that person that used to be silent but was very productive, they're actually going to stand out in the asynchronous environment. They're actually going to be more heavily rewarded because, the person that just showed up, talked a great game, didn't get shit done is going to be exposed in the new workplace because you don't need to be together to understand what's really happening. And then also the days of meetings without any decisions where we would sit for 90 minutes and no decisions were made. That's a big waste of time. Visibility without value has been exposed in this new hybrid environment that everybody is kind of moving into. And so again, the new environment rewards clear outcomes, ownership, and trust built through consistency. So leaders who cling to the butts in the seats thinking are managing comfort and not performance.
So Dr. D, what he's talking about, it kind of reminds me a little bit, and I'm not in your world, but I'm thinking, when I did have a language school, all my teachers were off doing their own things, and we'd have a monthly meeting. And what I did was, as Bruce said, round robin, just asking them like, hey, what were your big wins for the month? What did you accomplish? Do you have any advice, things that worked, things that didn't work for other coaches in the room? So I'm wondering, like academia, you kind of always worked a little bit asynchronous, right? Because you have your own Everybody has their own pieces, but together you're one university. How has that worked for so many years for you?
What a great question. So I think initially, 15 years ago, I was basically introducing, I don't want to say actually introducing, I was experimenting, exploring new ways of working because I didn't think that the old way was fit. And I want to say this about culture before I could continue answering that question. When two or more humans meet, there's going to be a culture established at some point. So there's always going to be a culture. We can have good cultures, bad cultures. There's always going to be a culture. And I would say this, the culture is either going to subsume you and happen to you, or you can massage, navigate, invent a culture. And you can make a choice. It's tough to invent a new culture. It's easier to be just subsumed into the existing ways of working. And how do I relate to that? That to your question is that I spent a lot of time exploring things working or not working, and then we can move forward. And now, in these past 5, 6, 7 years, I just got lucky enough that I've got a system of working, and everybody buys into the system of working, and it's a culture that is basically open to experiment, but with massive accountability. So don't experiment for the sake of it. Experiment where you've got a good chance of winning. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's how I've worked. I think separate me from how I work from traditional legacy academic institutions, because I would say that most of the time they're struggling to adopt to new ways of working.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, for people who are in that spot, because corporates never work that way, right, Bruce? We were always, like you said, visibility was rewarded, and everybody, the more meetings you had, the better. Oh gosh, she doesn't have 10 minutes in her day. She's full of meetings. She must be doing something. Shit, I didn't do anything all day. I didn't do anything all week except sit in a meeting. So that's why I was wondering, like, how, if we could take something from how the academic world has always been like individual yet one, because that's kind of what corporate's now becoming too. You're all individual but one. What you're saying, asynchronous. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, Bruce, but my brain was going. And
No, that was great. And I want to come back, Angie, to something that fits our team. You know, early on, everything we did, we'd do together. We'd jump on a call. We'd try to make. Now, granted, those are some key decisions. And again, for our listening audience, this is not a one size fits all. That's why you have to think about the design of work, not where you work. That's independent of just about everything else, other than what's the work we need to get done. And then let's design the environment for the best way to do that, which everybody said in an roundabout way. It all begins with having great clarity. I swear to God, a lot of meetings were because we didn't have clarity. Nobody took the time to make things real clear. And so we just kind of stumble and fumble in and out of, 8 hours of meetings every day.
And one simple thing, and Bruce is so amazing at this, and people run, because everybody's busy, right? We don't do this, an agenda. I don't want to go to a meeting anymore if we don't have an agenda. Bruce always gives us an agenda. It's not minute by minute, but he's got bullet points. This is what we're doing. This is what we're going to cover. And in the beginning, you're right. We did all hop on kind of because we had to. And I think that will be the same for any team. You should all be there in the beginning while you're deciding how this will work, while you're defining
then what
the
did
culture.
you do, Angie? What did you do 2 weeks ago?
Well,
what did you do? You called Bruce and you said, Bruce,
not going all your stupid fucking meetings anymore.
We need to get clear, because right now we're starting to take off. Thanks to our audience.
Yes,
Thank you.
guys. Thank
but
you.
Everything's taking off. Our individual coaching practices, Dr. D has a ton going on in the academic world with his new university modeling of remote learning. not to mention all of the AI stuff we're focusing on. We have a lot in the hopper. And what did you say? Let's get clear
I said,
on
let's
the
divide and
outcome.
conquer. Let's get
And
clear,
let's go
divide and
to
conquer.
yeah, let's move more towards an asynchronous. If we're
Yeah.
clear as the outcomes, Bruce, I'll take care of these two things. You take care of this, and we can keep moving. And yes, we'll come together on the decisions or something that's somewhat complex. We'll huddle up, but let's move more
And
to
share
that
progress.
asynchronous flow. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
share progress. Bruce has no idea if it takes me 2 hours or 10 hours because it doesn't matter. He knows
Yes.
that I get this
Yes.
done. We don't care how long it takes. This is what it takes. So when we get together, he doesn't say, gee, Angie, how long did you work on that? What days was it? What times was it? He says, hey, Angie, thanks for getting that done. And I'm the same to him, like, dude, I don't know how you had time to do that, but thank you so much for laying all that out for us. So it's all about progress. It's what we're putting out there. And the meeting time is no longer sitting around just idealizing things, but more a progress check-in, like progress report. This is where I am. This is where I am. Okay, what's next? What are our dates? Where do we go? And that's a big part of remote culture. You need to be so clear what's next, what's dates, written agendas. We may have gotten away with that in person where it's like, okay, we all kind of know what we're talking about. We'll make it work. It just takes, it's so inefficient when you're either hybrid or remote. It's
Yeah,
inefficient.
nobody is micromanaging anybody, but we do have checkpoints in which we check in with one another as to did we achieve the outcomes we all agreed to go after. So
Yeah.
with that, Dr. D, talk to us a little bit about designing the workplace from your perspective.
So I'll segue into that just by saying, that you were making some great points, both of you, in this last couple of minutes. Essentially, we have one way of saying is we have a great culture.
Oh
We
yeah,
have
we do.
we have
Because we
not
made it.
we have not taken somebody else's culture. We, over the 6, 8 months, 9 months, a year, we've created our own culture. This is a culture that we've created. So designing a workplace as a system, you got to. I think the first thing is there's got to be a methodology. This is a big question, and this is why I introduced the concept of explore and exploit at the outset, because it's to use the words. You can just imagine 50 PowerPoint slides creating a strategic system, and there'd be the words strategic and system repeated over 50 slides. It's really not good enough. You've got to have a system to decide how you're going to do that. It doesn't really matter what the system is, as long as it allows two things. One, you're going to move forward. And two, if you get it wrong, you've got the flexibility to change it. So that's all the system requires. One system is to think about, well, who are we as a company? Who are we as an organization? What are we doing? And how are we going to continue exploiting what we already know? And what innovations do we need to explore? The strategic system will become born out of that.
Oh yeah. And to make those two work, as you were talking, I thought there's two things. It was kind of when Bruce was talking, and then when you talked, I'm like, you know what is at the bottom of both of that? It's trust and transparency. You need trust to be able to build that strategic system and all agree that that's what's going to work. And then you need transparency. That's for the exploiting part. I should have written this down. Dr. D throws smart shit at me and I can't repeat it. But the other one, the second one, he said, innovative, that is where you need the transparency, because you can't adjust, or you can't adjust properly if you don't know where you are. We've had this argument with some of the past marketing things we've worked with, and they promise you this. I'm like, I don't care what you promised me. I need to know what happened now with this so that I can adjust. So trust and transparency, as both of you were talking, I think are going to be foundational to
totally.
everything we're offering.
Absolutely. I do want to just quickly say, that's one system of building a strategic system. Another way to do it is that a friend and I, a Professor Alan Brown and I, who'll come on the show at some point, developed a system thinking about how do you survive and thrive in the AI world, and listing 5 critical dilemmas that you address in building your strategic system. That I'll tell you quickly what the dilemmas are, and then I'll just concentrate on one dilemma. So there's a productivity dilemma, people versus tech. There's an ethical dilemma, speaks for itself. The leadership dilemma speaks for itself. The human dilemma also. Then there's the value dilemma. And this is what I want to just focus on. Because in building the strategic system of work, think about that the value, we have to think differently with AI, because we're moving from a system or value system where the value is extracted in exchange to value in use. Fundamental. Anybody who doesn't get that, or doesn't try and get that, doesn't try and adopt that, which is why I want to make a big deal about this in the next 30 seconds or so. If you don't get that, you cannot build a strategic system, a strategic workplace, which is going to be relevant to the future. So I'm just going to repeat it. Value in exchange. You buy a car, I sell a car. You buy a car, I give you cash, or you give me cash. That's value in exchange. Value in use is, well, let me try out your AI product. Let me just see. I'm not going to pay you for it. I want to try it out. I want to use it. And if there's value for me, then you get a big piece of the pie. That's the simplest form that I can explain it in the time that we have. But this is the most valuable thing. Thank you, both of you, for giving me this section about how to build a strategic system for the workplace. Because if you don't think about, well, what is your system of building your system, it's hard to build a system. Super hard. So if there's one thing that I can really go loud on, is this value in use. Don't build a new system to adapt to the new world, which is based on the old value of exchange. Because you're going, it's going away. More and more, it's going away. You're going to need a value in use system.
And that goes back to where you started. It was like, make sure you know who you are, where you're going, which is not going to be where you were. So you have to make sure you're gaining value for the future, not the way you got it in the past. And then we go back to what Bruce was saying, take into account you're going to have these asynchronous ways. And above all that, you're going to have to get together, trust each other to decide what systems you want to use, define how to use those systems. And then you're going to have to get back together occasionally and adjust based on the transparency of how those systems are going. You may need to add more definition, more clarity going forward. So I think you wrapped that up really well. Bruce, you want to give us homework?
Yeah. Yeah. So my big takeaway is culture is built through clarity, not closeness.
Yeah.
Everything we're saying is
it's not going to the zoo.
Yeah. All right.
No.
So hopefully this assignment pulls it all together. So this is just a 7-day work assignment and you could think about it as your team or your organization, but it might be even worth a few conversations with colleagues. First step is identify one pain point. So for example, too many meetings, it takes us forever to make a decision, there's burnout on the team, or it's communication overload. So identify one pain point. The second is then ask these 3 questions. Does this support outcomes or optics? Is ownership crystal clear? Is this designed for humans or habits?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Good one. Yeah.
That's the 3. And then step 3 is run the 7-day experiment. You might cancel a recurring meeting. You may redesign a workflow, or you will clarify one decision rule. Just try it. And then debrief. What improved? What surprised you? And what will you keep? So that's it. Step one, identify one pain point, ask the 3 questions we just covered, run a 7-day experiment, and then debrief. Even if you just do it with 2 or 3 people on the team or within your organization, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at what could happen as a result of starting that conversation. So with that, keep in mind the future of work isn't about where you work. It's about how intentionally you design the work itself. So with that, everybody, cheers. Hit
Cheers,
that
guys.
subscribe and like button. Please subscribe.
Please.
And thank you all so much. Cheers.
Cheers.
Nice.